connected to my throat chakra, and I was finding all of these huge blockages that had been there for probably my whole life, honestly, that had just been like building and building there.
Hi, I'm Jillian. I'm the owner of Authentic You Fitness. On this page, we talk about physical, mental, and spiritual health. Each week, we focus on a different chakra. Within the chakras, there are many different topics to be discussed, and so each week, we zero in on a topic. At the end of the week, we have an authentic guest who talks a little bit about their life experience, as well as elaborates on the topic and how it relates to them. Welcome to our feature authentic guest of the week.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to our authentic guest. So this week, we are lucky to have Manda Manning. Manda is a part of a duo with her sister, Malia, and they run Sisters That Stray. They have an online community called Light Warriors Rising, where they empower people to stop people-pleasing, regulate emotions, communicate healthier, and set boundaries, which are all four big topics that are kind of encapsulating what our topic is for this week, which is the throat chakra, and our topic is say what you mean. So without further ado, welcome, Manda. Are you able to tell us a little bit about who you are, how you became the person that you are today, a little bit about your story and your path that led you to become the amazing woman that you are today?
Oh, thank you, Jillian. That was such a beautiful welcome and intro. I'm really honored to be here with you. I fully believe in anything that you do. So I love this series, and I'm really excited to be here and talking about these topics. So yeah, it's been a beautiful, wild journey so far, this like awakening journey, I guess you could call it. Yeah, I think it really started for me back in I think 2017, 2018. My sister and I, who, you mentioned, we run our business together. At the time, we were living in Denver, Colorado, and we were both working these jobs that we thought were like supposed to be our dream jobs, but we were both pretty miserable. I mean, we weren't living very healthy lives, like a little bit, but like really not taking care of ourselves mentally and emotionally. Like maybe we were physically working out and eating healthy, but like our emotional and mental and spiritual well-being really wasn't there yet. So we had this random trip booked to Costa Rica because we love to travel. The name of our company together, our business together, is called Sisters That Stray. So it actually started as a travel blog back in like 2015, forever ago. And so anyway, so we always loved to travel, and we booked this random trip to Costa Rica totally on a whim. It was like over Thanksgiving weekend. I'm based in the States, so Thanksgiving is a holiday there, but we booked it because we were like, we're not going to go home. We're going to go to Costa Rica instead. And it ended up changing our lives. We arrived and just understood that the way that we had been living back home was not true to us. It wasn't true to who we were, and just to see a new way of life, to see the way that people were so intentional and present in the way that they were living. Like, they weren't glued to their phones. They weren't like, angry in traffic. Like most of them were just, like didn't even have a car. They would just walk everywhere. Like people would slow down around sunset, and everyone would gather at the beach and watch the sunset every day. Like that's something that we don't see a lot here in the States, especially in a big city. Like living in Denver, it was very much surrounded by this big city energy, which can be great. I still love big cities. But you can kind of get caught up in that like hustle mentality. And that's definitely what had happened to us. And we had completely just lost touch with like ourselves, with our truth, and what really lit us up. And it just kind of reignited. It was almost just like it was the beginning of our awakening, because I remember just from that point forward, I had a whole like fresh outlook. It was like seeing the world through new eyes, basically. And so we came home and we were like, I think we have to move to Costa Rica. So we did. We sold all of our things, like everything. Some of it we just threw in a dumpster and like ditched it, and we're like, all right, we're just out of here. And we quit our jobs and moved to Costa Rica with zero plan, just fully trusting that there was a reason we were being called here. And we just figured it out as we went. You know, we found odd jobs along the way. And then it also gave us the space to really start to envision Sisters That Stray and what we really wanted it to be. Because at the time it was still a travel blog, and we were like, this isn't working. This isn't necessarily what we want to do. And so we started to get, gain clarity around what it was, what Sisters That Stray could be, what we wanted it to be. And from there, after living in Costa Rica, we had so many incredible experiences there. And ultimately we felt another pull to go to, this time, Bali, like across the world. And I totally was trusting Leah on this one, because I was like, I don't know, I hadn't ever really thought about going there before. And Leah just like randomly was like, I think that we need to go to Bali next. And I'm like, okay, cool, that sounds great. Like I'm fully trusting that this is the right thing. And we kind of knew, like, we were like, okay, we had gotten as much as we needed to at that time in our life from being in Costa Rica. And we're like, it's time for the next chapter. So again, trusting, like with a zero plan, and still trusting that there was a reason for it. We went out to Bali, and again, it was another completely life-changing experience. It's funny because I hear, before I would hear people talk about Bali and I'd see photos, and I'm like, I bet it's one of those places that's just like so hyped up. And it's not. We got there and we were like, wow, this place is real. Like the magic here is real. Like there's a real vortex of just like high spiritual energy there it's so potent. It's like you just being there, you feel like a different person. So again, it was completely just really impactful. Like there were definitely a couple moments I remember in particular that really awakened Leah and I to like particular chakras, actually, that kind of helped us begin to understand on a deeper level what our purpose really is. And for Leah, she had this huge awakening around her sacral chakra. So as you know, that's like where your womb space lives, and it's connected to your sexuality, sensuality, manifestation, creation. And she has, from that space, has birthed like her own offering now that she's helping women with in Radiant Relationship Academy. And then for me, I, was connected to my throat chakra, and I was finding all of these huge blockages that had been there for probably my whole life, honestly, that had just been like building and building there. And so from there, finding the tools that I needed while I was in Bali. Of course, like I'm surrounded by so blessed, so grateful to be surrounded by so many wise teachers out there. So I really was able to learn how to heal my throat chakra, and how to find my voice again, and how to express myself, and how to like release all of those blocks that had been stuck there for so long. And so now I just feel, again, so grateful to be able to help other women to release those blocks and to master the art of speaking their truth. Because as you know, like as soon as you learn how to speak your truth, I mean, everything changes. Like the way that you show up in your life, the way that you communicate, the way that you hold yourself, the way that you carry yourself, and the way you, show up in your work and in your relationships, like everything changes. Mm-hmm. So it's really, really satisfying work, but the work never ends, right? Like I say all of that, and I still, I'm like, feel like I'm constantly like finding new layers, right? Like then I'm like, oh, well, that's interesting. Like, let's peel that back. What's behind that? It's like, it's a never ending practice. So yeah, that's kind of a snapshot of my story.
That's awesome. That was amazing. It felt like I was like walking through all of that with you, like seeing all the visuals. Super cool, and very cool that you were like, oh yeah, I found it in my throat chakra, because I actually didn't know that until
Really?
now. Yeah. So that's funny. It's really cool how Malia is like more with the sacral and you're more with the throat, because your lower chakras are more anchoring you into the human
Right.
experience, whereas your upper chakras are more connecting you to the spiritual experience. So
Hmm.
that's really cool that the two of you have that balance.
Yeah.
And working your way up, like there's so much benefit, like you said, with being able to speak your truth.
Mm.
And you can kind of hear in your story like little hints of where you were kind of feeling that energy of your higher self, or your like your true self coming through you. And as you practice more and more speaking your truth, like the easier that voice comes through you and the more you embody that. So yeah, super cool to hear about kind of exactly how the steps you took to get to where you are, because I think a lot of people are afraid to take those initial steps, and
Mm.
that's a whole other topic, right? Fear is a whole other topic in itself, but like, being able to see what really could happen if you listen to that voice and you
Yeah.
act on it, is really cool.
Totally. Yes.
Yeah, so like I kind of mentioned, the topic is say what you mean, and it is with the throat chakra and speaking your truth. But what does that, like, the specifically say what you mean, what does that mean to you, and how do you associate that with speaking your truth?
Mm. Say what you mean. I love that. For me, that immediately pulls me into another part of my journey, which has been, well, it's all related, but I'm not sure. Are you familiar with like codependency, like, and how that shows up in
Yeah, yeah,
relationships?
definitely. And yeah, that's yes.
Yes. Yes. So like, yeah, it's essentially like really similar to people pleasing. So, if anyone's watching, listening, and codependency isn't really like resonating, it's like people pleasing basically. It's which is something that I have been in the process of overcoming for years now. I mean, I naturally, that's like my natural go-to mode, I guess, is like people pleaser, and that's like my comfort zone is people pleasing. So I've had to like train myself to break that pattern and to break out of the codependent pattern, which is essentially like just putting everyone else's needs above yours and putting everyone else's comfort even above yours. Like for me, when I hear say what you mean, I can think of so many times where I was not saying what I meant. I was saying what I wanted, what I believed others wanted me to say.
Mhm.
And I would do that because I'm like, well, being like you were saying, being more connected to the higher chakras, like you're very much in touch with like your intuition, and you're very just like naturally intuitive, empathic even. So
Mhm.
I feel like I am very intuitive, and so I can sense, and that's like almost a bad thing for me because I can sense in other people like their emotions and their energy. I can feel it so strongly
Mhm.
that means like, if I'm not careful, I'll tend to almost like morph into whatever I feel they want me to be, who they want me to be. And then that I end up saying things that I don't mean because I'm just saying what I feel like they want to hear from me. And I'm saying what I know would make them happy or what I know would make them, feel good, even if it feels not good, not okay to me. So this is something, of course, that like, again, it's a practice, and I like to say that I'm a recovering people pleaser, right? So for me, like saying what you mean is, ooh, that's powerful. And I feel like for women, sometimes that can be a really scary thing, like saying what you mean, because sometimes saying what you mean can make you feel like unsafe,
Mhm.
because for some of us, I think like a lot of us, we grew up in environments where it wasn't safe to be who we are. It wasn't safe to say how we feel. And
Mhm.
um, so I think that like now part of the practice is like reparenting ourselves and
Mhm.
helping ourselves remember that like we are safe to speak our truth. And If the people in our life don't make us feel safe for speaking that truth, then that's something else to look at, right? Like something that those are relationships to look at that might not be so healthy and supportive. So yeah, saying what you mean. And I think that there's another, so like there's like the confidence part where you have to like get to a point where you feel confident enough to say what you mean without that, like the fear, right? Without that fear of judgment, or the fear, for me, it was always like not so much judgment, but the fear of disappointing people. That's like always been my biggest fear. So yeah, so it's like getting past that fear, but then it's also like, maybe you've experienced this as well, or like seen it in your clients. It's like before you can say what you mean, before you can speak your truth, it's like you have to find your truth, you know, like it's like that's kind of like actually the first step, right? Before you even like find the confidence to speak it, you have to find it first. So and I think that like you were saying, how, you know, the higher and the lower realms, and how we can, you know, Leah and I can help each other connect the two. I feel like that's where Leah actually has helped me a lot in like coming into my body, because dropping into my body, like I'm a Pisces, and sun and Aquarius moon and rising, so I'd have a tendency to just like float away. So Leah helps me to like really ground down again, and to ground back into my body. You know, she's been really influential in that whole like part of my journey, of like finding a home again in my body, because I had left my body for so long. I was so disconnected from it. And I feel like in our body is where we find our truth. And in our body is where we find that confidence as well to speak our truth, you know, like, and then it also becomes part of like just living your truth. Like when you feel your truth so alive in your body that it's almost just like it just comes out. It's just like part of who you are now. And it's not so much like, you know, you don't have to think about it so much. It's like you're just living it, you're embodying it. Yeah, and I feel like the throat chakra is really fun actually to connect with the lower chakras. I'm sure, again, like this is something that you've probably practiced as well, but like especially like connecting it with like the solar plexus, connecting it with that, like that our inner power and self-confidence has helped me so much. Like just establishing that connection between the two has helped me so much to release, and almost like using that fire to like purify the blockages in my throat, right, in the throat chakra, so that it's clear, it's a clear vessel to be able to express and release my truth.
Totally. Yeah, you touched on so many good points there. One huge thing that I'm kind of feeling out of all of that is it is extremely important to start at the ground and work your way up. It's kind of interesting that you mentioned reparenting, because we talked about that last week in our inner child video. And limiting beliefs was the solar plexus before. So anyone who's been following along with the videos, you can kind of sense the theme, but it's super important to work at the bottom, work through all of those chakras, so that by the time you get to your throat, you are easily able to speak it. And you made a really good point there about knowing what your truth is before you can speak it, which is huge. And there is huge steps in every level. So on the very basis of the throat chakra, speaking your truth, then maybe you'd have to go back before you can even feel confident with that and knowing your truth. So spending time with yourself, spending time journaling, practicing, you know, even just getting comfortable speaking it to your friends and family, you know, not necessarily going out of your way. It can be a huge change for someone who's gone their whole life living as a people pleaser. For myself, I've always been an empath, and there's lots of people out there who are also empaths, which relates directly to that, where you, like you said, you feel everyone's energy. So if someone is feeling that disappointment, you feel the disappointment. So like you're experiencing their disappointment for what you said, and it can get really challenging with speaking your truth, because you almost have to be prepared to like be grounded, know that you are confident in what you're saying, so that when you do feel that inevitable disappointment, it's like, it's okay, because I'm coming from my heart, I'm coming from a place of love. And so even if they don't agree, it doesn't make me wrong. And along the journey, you know, you are going to lose people, you are going to shed people, but part of growing and part of becoming your authentic self is shedding those layers. So so saying what you mean is a really important ground place for, you know, really starting to open that throat chakra a little bit more, but along with all the other chakras. You can't just go straight to the throat, or it's not going to work.
Totally.
No, so that's really great. So what does your authentic voice sound like? Who is she?
Oh, that is such a good question, Jillian. Wow. So, okay, what does she sound like? Oh, my authentic voice. So actually, part of my my like work with my throat chakra has been, I think, like, it's so deep rooted, because I can remember from a kid, being a super young kid, always being like mistaken as shy. And I can also always remember people always asking me to speak up, because I have a pretty soft-spoken voice. So those two things have like stuck with me my whole life, and it made me always feel like I just wasn't heard, you know, like feeling like that just, yeah, like that feeling of like my voice is not heard, like literally physically it's not being heard. And I'm also, you know, like people are just assuming that I'm shy, but it's because I was just more so like very reflective and always had like a very vivid imagination. So again, I'm sharing this in case anybody's listening and they're like, yeah, that's me too. So like, you know, kind of always that feeling of like being misunderstood, of like, no, I'm not shy. I'm just kind of like reflecting and processing. And I would only speak if I had something really like that I felt like I needed to say. And I just was never like very verbal person. So it's been a whole practice of like really activating my voice and yeah, like finding my voice, because it was like, also it's just been this like whole other, besides like the spiritual and the emotional side of it as well, like there's definitely very much like a physical side of it as well, for me at least. And something that has helped me, a couple of things that has helped me is well, one is embodiment, and that involves, so embodiment practices are just breath, sound, and movement. So the sound piece of it, like the breath and the movement, I'm like, yeah, like I totally got that. But the sound piece of it, I found was like super challenging for me, because I felt uncomfortable like releasing sound, you know, like just like, and of course that, you know, has to do with the work, you know, that's still there in my throat chakra. But I was, you know, that was another layer. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like, why am I having such a hard time, you know, releasing sound in my practice? So, you know, I started to peel that layer back, and I'm like, becoming more and more comfortable with it, because the more, like you were saying, just practicing speaking your truth with friends and family, and even just like saying it out loud by yourself, like the more that really, that's real, that's valid, because the more that we practice something, the more natural it becomes. And like, no matter what it is, and it can relate to this as well. So like, I just started practicing embodiment, you know, like making it part of my daily routine. And the more that I practiced releasing sound, the more natural it became. And then the other thing that really helped was Leah also taught me this, and it was to speak from your womb space, or to speak from your, I mean, we say that as women, but like if you're not a woman, it's really just like speaking from that, even like your solar plexus, like your belly, like speaking from your power center. And like, you know, like speaking from like that, like what you were saying, like it's, the work starts at the bottom. It starts from the ground up. So like once you have that really solid foundation, like pulling from that strength and that power that's there to like carry that through your voice. So that has helped me as so much, as well as like just doing things that used to make me really uncomfortable. So like, public speaking or something like this, or I teach yoga. And at first that was a block for me when I was first teaching yoga, because I was like so self-conscious of my voice. I was like, can anybody hear me? I was always worried that I was like speaking too quietly. But again, the more I practice like projecting my voice, the more, again, natural it became. So I like to think of, I don't know if you ever play with like the inner feminine archetypes, but one that I really like to embody is the wild woman archetype. So that for me is so fun because I love to like embody her and like release these really primal sounds, and I feel like that like really opens my throat chakra when I just like release really primal sound. And she also is very, I love to embody her whenever I'm feeling myself like pulling back into those people-pleasing tendencies. Because when I embody my wild woman, she's like, F no, she's like, break free of that, right? Like, let's set ourselves free. Let's liberate ourselves of that crap. And let's like express ourselves fully. Like, she's so fiercely protective of our boundaries. So like, especially when I feel like my boundaries are being tested and I'm like, Manda, you need to speak up. You need to say something. I can like start to embody my inner wild woman to feel that like instinct to protect my boundaries and to like speak from that place of like just of my power center, and like just to feel that fierceness, like, and that's something that's fun, like, exploring the archetypes. They are the kind of like all the different layers of us, like the whole spectrum, right? Because like we don't have to just be the good girl, we don't have to just be even like the bad girl, the crazy, the wild one. Like we can be all of it. We can be like that full spectrum. So I love to like drop into these different archetypes whenever I feel like I really need that like reinforcement, like that, like just like embody, especially like when you were saying like, what does she sound like? And I immediately just started picturing my inner wild woman. I just see her as this like totally like fierce jungle goddess, like emerging from the jungle. And she's just like, she knows who she is and she's like ready to defend what she loves, what's important to her. So that's what I envision, and that's how I feel
I love that.
Feel that comes through.
I love that you said, you can be different things at different times, because that's so true. Just because you feel one certain way one time, like your voice doesn't always have to sound the same. So that's a really good point that you made. And it depends where you're at. Like, just because you speak differently in different situations doesn't mean you're not being your authentic self. Like when I'm working with my personal training clients, I'm like, yeah, let's go. But if I'm leading a meditation, I'm not talking like that. I'm much more calm. And so your voice, there's a fun aspect to it, totally, and like a playful aspect. Like, it's good to have fun while you're learning about yourself. And I also really liked how you said that you were worried you weren't being heard, because that is another part of the throat chakra. It's not always speaking, it's also listening and hearing, and being able to say what you mean and have it be understood by the other people who are witnessing it in the way that you meant it to be understood, which all has to do with energy. If you're carrying some sort of energy that is not true to you, or you're carrying, like you're speaking from a voice of fear or a voice of disappointment or a voice of shame or whatever, and you're not speaking authentically, then that's the vibration that other people are going to pick up on. So it's super important to work through all those different voices, and then to find your home voice in amongst all of that, so that that's the vibration that matches it in the outer reality. Super cool. Yeah. No, this has been a really great chat. You've touched on so many points, like more than I ever could have imagined for one video, which is amazing. And I think it's going to be really great inspiration for those who are watching to not only work on their throat chakra, but also on all the other chakras leading up to their throat chakra, because it really shows the importance of each individual chakra and why we need to be comfortable in all of those in order to speak authentically, which is amazing.
Yes.
With all of that being said, our final question, which I ask every guest because I love it. Everyone has a different answer, but it goes perfectly with throat chakra. If you had a message you could speak, you could broadcast microphone to the entire world, what would that message be?
Love yourself first.
Yeah.
That's it.
I love it. Oh,
Start
that's
there.
so good. Yes. Perfect. Love yourself first. Oh, so important. So important. When you love yourself, you love everyone else. Awesome.
Exactly.
Oh, amazing. All right. Well, thank you so much, Amanda, for your time and for sharing all of your wisdom with us. So many great little tidbits of information in there. And I really, really appreciate you in my life, and, you know, seeing your updates. Like, anyone watching this, if you are inspired by anything Amanda has to say, this is just getting started. It's just, she's a wealth of knowledge and of this kind of information. So, and I'm looking forward to connecting with Malia in the coming weeks for sacral chakra. So,
Yes.
all right. So we will close it out there. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much again for coming.
Oh, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure.